You ever been betrayed so quietly it echoed louder than any scream? That night, the table was set for celebration. Mom had pulled out the good dishes, white china with the blue rims she only touched twice a year. There were 12 of us, elbow to elbow, the entire family buzzing about the big moment. I thought they meant me. I thought they were finally going to see me. I'd spent 5 years building that business from a dusty laptop and $68 in my checking account. No help, no cosigns, just me and insomnia. I coded through Christmases, I missed birthdays, I gave up dating. But that dinner? That was supposed to be the turning point. My "I told you so" moment. My reward. We'd just secured a major partnership deal with a Fortune 500 company. The kind of thing that only happens after you've crawled through hell and learned to build in fire. I told my sister 2 days ago during a call. She seemed excited. Said she'd help me explain it to everyone. I didn't think she meant what happened next. The room went quiet as my dad stood up, lifting a glass of red wine. He cleared his throat and smiled at me. Well, I thought it was at me, before turning to my sister and saying, "To the visionary behind it all. To the only one with true entrepreneurial spirit in this family." Then he raised his glass. To her. And the room followed. 12 glasses clinked in the air. I sat there, fork frozen in midair, my throat so dry it burned. She did not correct him. She did not say, "Actually, it was my brother." She just smiled and said, "It was nothing, really." I didn't even blink. I couldn't. I was still trying to understand if what just happened was real. This was a company I built from scratch. I designed every line of code. I answered every email. I funded it by selling my car, taking out a $12,000 loan with 19% interest. And somehow, I was being edited out of my own story at a table I helped feed. My mom touched my shoulder and whispered, "Isn't this exciting? She's really making something of herself." I turned to look at her, to see if maybe there was a joke somewhere in her eyes. There wasn't. It was as if I'd been cast in a movie about my own life. Only I wasn't the lead anymore. I wasn't even a supporting role. I was background noise. I tried to say something, to interrupt, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. And the applause was too loud. They were clapping for her. They were calling her brilliant, tenacious, gifted. And all I could do was sit there, biting the inside of my cheek, wondering how long this had been brewing. How long she'd been planting this story behind my back. And more importantly, why now? She'd never even asked me how the company was doing. Not once. Not when I lived on cup noodles. Not when I almost lost my apartment. Not even when I got hacked and had to rebuild from scratch. But now she was the visionary. I replayed her smile over and over. It wasn't just proud, it was polished. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like she knew this was coming. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This was a theft. A carefully orchestrated heist. And I hadn't even locked the doors. And it was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like a slow-motion clock, replaying that moment over and over again. The toast, the cheers, my sister's smug little smile, and that one sentence from my dad that gutted me more than he'll ever know. To the only one with true entrepreneurial spirit in this family. It wasn't just a toast. It was a declaration, a rewrite of history. But let me tell you the real history. The company they think my sister built? I started that damn thing from a 2015 Lenovo laptop that ran hot enough to boil coffee. I was 26, broke, and living in a studio apartment above a laundromat that stank of mildew and bleach. I had $43,200 in student loan debt, $1,800 in credit card bills, and exactly 0 investors. My parents called me a dreamer. My sister called me delusional. I remember one night, 3:17 a.m., I had 3 tabs open, one for freelance jobs, one for ramen recipes, and one for bankruptcy advice. I had $18.52 in my checking account, and I still bought a domain name for $14.99. That domain, that's the empire she's sitting on now. I wrote the first 2,000 lines of code myself. No sleep, no savings, no safety net. I pitched strangers in DMs, I cold emailed tech blogs. I built a prototype while working part-time as a delivery driver. I was every department: tech, design, support, sales. You know who wasn't there? Her. She was traveling. Paris, Dubai, posting photos captioned, "Manifesting luxury." I was manifesting rent. The only time she ever mentioned my project was during Thanksgiving, when she laughed across the table and said, "So, are you still playing CEO of that thing?" That thing was starting to gain traction. Slowly, one client turned into 3, then 10. I upgraded to a used MacBook. I hired a virtual assistant in the Philippines and paid her out of my own rent money. I studied UI design on YouTube while eating canned soup straight from the can. Still, no one noticed. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not even my friends. I was grinding in silence. Until the day I hit my first $10,000 month. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post about it. I just cried on my bathroom floor and ate a frozen pizza. I thought, finally, maybe they'll see me. I told my mom. She said, "Wow, that's great, sweetie," like I'd won a raffle. I told my dad. He blinked and asked if I was still planning to apply to grad school. But I told my sister, and for the first time, she didn't laugh. She listened. Too closely. She asked questions. What tools are you using? How do you get clients? What's your churn rate? I thought she was curious. Interested. Maybe, finally, proud. But now I see it for what it was, recon. She was casing the joint, getting inside info. Because 3 months later, she texted me out of the blue. "Hey, thinking of pivoting into business stuff. Can I help you manage your brand a little?" Help. That was the word she used. Help. I didn't think twice. She was my sister. I let her in. Gave her access to the business Instagram, my scheduling tools, even my striped dashboard, temporarily, just so she could pull some stats for a presentation she was mocking up for fun. A presentation, she said. But I never saw that presentation. What I did see, 2 weeks later, was a new email signature on my client invoices. Rachel Palmer, co-founder. I stared at the screen for 2 full minutes, thinking it had to be a mistake. Maybe an autofill error. Maybe my assistant added it by accident. But no, it wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I called her. She picked up like nothing was wrong, chewing gum and talking to someone else in the background. I asked her, politely, at first, what the hell was going on. She laughed. "Oh, that. Chill. It's just for optics. Clients like to know there's a female co-founder. Trust me, it helps conversion." A female co-founder. She wasn't part of the company. She hadn't touched the code. She didn't know what APIs were. She couldn't even explain our product in 1 sentence. But now she was rewriting the story. And nobody stopped her. Not my parents. Not my uncle. Not even me. Because at that point, I still thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was a small thing. Maybe if I let it slide, we'd laugh about it one day. Spoiler, we didn't. Because that dinner toast? That was just the opening act. The spotlight was moving. The applause was getting louder. And behind the curtain, she was already taking more than just the credit. I wish I could say the dinner toast was the wake-up call. That I stood up, flipped the table, and exposed her lie in front of the whole family. But I didn't. I sat there, chewing slow, tasting betrayal between bites of overcooked chicken. My fork was still frozen in midair when Mom said, "Rachel, you should consider applying for that Young Entrepreneur Award the Chamber of Commerce is doing." I laughed. Out loud. Sharp. Bitter. No one else did. My dad raised an eyebrow. "What's so funny, son?" "Son." That word never felt so wrong. I excused myself, walked out onto the porch, and called my assistant, Jules. "Log me out of everything," I said. "Now, I want full password resets across all platforms. 2-factor everything. Lock it down like Fort Knox." Jules paused. "What's going on?" "She stole the company," I said, and I handed her the keys. You know that feeling when you realize the villain didn't sneak in the front door? They were already living in the house. That was me. The next few hours were chaos. While Jules ran digital lockdown, I opened my laptop in my car and started checking everything. Email, compromised. Instagram, locked out. Stripe, joint access, now showing Rachel Palmer as primary. She'd made herself co-owner on every client invoice. Even worse, she had sent out a newsletter to my client list, my list, introducing herself as the visionary behind the brand's new direction. She used the words, taking the business to new heights. I wanted to scream. Instead, I kept digging. And then I found it. An NDA document she'd sent to my assistant the week before, requesting Jules to sign a new employment agreement that shifted her reporting line directly under Rachel. This wasn't just credit theft. It was a corporate coup. I went to my parents, told them everything, laid out the screenshots, the emails, the fake founder claim. You know what they said? Maybe she's just trying to help, my mom offered. She's always had a flair for leadership. She's a thief, I said. You're congratulating a thief. She's your sister, Dad replied, standing like a judge in his living room courtroom. You need to be the bigger man. I stared at him. The bigger man? I'd been the broke man. The tired man. The man who skipped holidays to write code. The man who paid rent late and ate $8 noodles while building a dream that everyone said wouldn't last a month. Now they wanted me to shut up and share. They didn't understand. She wasn't just invading my business. She was building her own kingdom out of my bricks. And she wasn't slowing down. That week, 3 clients messaged me directly, confused. They'd received Rachel's new client experience survey, asking for feedback on her leadership and ideas. 2 clients actually praised her. Nice to see the woman behind the brand. She's a natural CEO. My brand. My work. Her smile. I sent Rachel a cease and desist. She replied with a voice note. Relax. We're family. You really want to lawyer up over this? You're sounding unstable. Unstable. She gaslit me and used the family card like a shield. But what she didn't know was that I'd been keeping receipts too. Every file. Every change log. Every date-stamped version of the business plan. Every invoice. Every payment trail. Even the original LLC filing. Filed by me, signed by me, months before she even knew what the business was. I had proof. But the problem wasn't legal. The problem was public. Because the internet doesn't care about truth, it cares about perception. And Rachel? She was already on podcasts. She did an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, talking about bootstrapping her dream. She even posted a photo of our old apartment with the caption, "This is where it all began." It didn't. She never even saw the inside of that place. But the photo? It went viral. 20,000 likes. Everyone loves a Cinderella story. I was watching my own biography, told by someone else, who hadn't lived a single page of it. I had 2 options, stay silent and hope the truth surfaced, or take everything public and risk burning the bridge that tied me to the only family I had left. I chose a third option. I started building again. Not revenge. Not a counterattack. A resurrection. A brand new platform. New name. New product. Same fire. And this time, no one gets a spare key. But I didn't realize. She'd already started planning something bigger. Something that would risk not just my company, but my entire identity. I was in the middle of designing the landing page for my new platform when I got a notification, an alert for a public trademark filing. She filed for the trademark under the old brand name. My brand name, Rachel, filed as the sole founder. I stared at the screen like it had punched me. The worst part? It was slick, professional. Her lawyer must have backdated contracts, scrubbed mentions of me, and painted a narrative that was airtight from the outside. I called my attorney. He paused and said, "She's trying to erase you." Erase me? This wasn't identity theft. This was reputation assassination. And she was using my own work as the weapon. But I wasn't going to roll over. I gathered every file, screenshot, timestamp, and message, everything from the LLC filing, to the first prototype sketches, to that audio clip of her laughing when I first pitched her the idea, and she said, "It sounds like a waste of time." That laugh would become my intro. I hired a PR fixer, not the press release type, the kind who used to scrub reputations, now hired to resurrect mine. We crafted a campaign, the Real Founder series. I filmed a raw, unfiltered video. My face. My words. No edits. I walked viewers through the journey. The sleepless nights, the launch failures, the 3 a.m. calls with clients who couldn't pay, the time I maxed out 2 credit cards just to keep the servers running. I ended it with a simple message. She may have stolen the story, but I lived it. And now, I'm telling it myself. The video blew up. 40K views in the first 48 hours. Then 100K. Then press coverage. Tech founder claims sister hijacked startup identity. Truth or sibling rivalry. Inside a family business torn in 2. Suddenly, Rachel was on the defensive. She called me. First time in weeks. "You didn't have to go public," she said. "You didn't have to lie," I replied. She went quiet. Then she said something that still sticks in my brain. "You were never the face. You were the engine." People don't love engines, they love drivers. That's when I knew. She never wanted to build. She wanted to shine. And she thought the world would never care enough to ask questions. But now, people were asking. Clients started messaging. Partners reached out. A few even apologized for believing her version. And then, an investor emailed me, one I hadn't heard from in over a year. He wrote, "I always knew it was you. She pitched me last week. Told me she was scaling with your original team. I declined, because I know who wrote the code. Let's talk." Rachel had tried to sell a lie to a man who had seen the first pitch deck with my handwriting on it. I scheduled the call. That's when things shifted. I wasn't just rebuilding. I was rising. But as soon as I felt my footing, the floor cracked again. Because Rachel? She filed a lawsuit. Defamation. Loss of income. Emotional damage. And here's the kicker. She submitted our old text messages out of context, painting a picture of a co-founder partnership gone wrong. I was in a legal firestorm, and the internet? Half of them thought I was a bitter brother. The other half thought I was a hero. But none of them really knew the truth. And truth? It was about to surface, in the most unexpected way. Because while prepping for court, my lawyer found something strange in the corporate records Rachel had submitted. A signed affidavit from someone who shouldn't have existed. A former contractor claimed he built the original back end of the app, but I'd never hired him, never heard of him. So who was he? A paid actor? Or worse, someone she pulled from my past to forge a fake foundation? I needed answers. Fast. Because this wasn't about the business anymore. It was about my name, my story, my legacy, and I'd be damned if I let her rewrite it. I didn't sleep the night we found that name. Amir Dorsey, listed as the original back-end developer in Rachel's fraudulent lawsuit exhibits. Signed under penalty of perjury. Problem? I'd never hired a back-end developer named Amir. Ever. So I did what I always did when something didn't make sense. I dug. And what I found made my stomach turn. Amir Dorsey wasn't a developer. He was a barista from a coffee shop Rachel used to frequent near her college. I found his LinkedIn. No tech background. No companies. Just lattes and latte art. So how did he end up signing legal documents claiming he built MY code? Simple. Rachel paid him. I confronted him. I showed up at his job, unannounced. I stood in line, ordered a black coffee, and when he handed it to me, I looked him in the eye and said, "So how much did Rachel offer you to lie in federal court?" His face went pale. He pulled me aside after his shift, sat across from me at a rickety outdoor table, and whispered everything. Rachel told him it was a fake claim, that I wouldn't fight it, that it was just a formality to push her name forward in a brand restructuring. She paid him $1,200 cash and promised him another $3,000 if the court didn't push back. I recorded the entire confession on my phone. 32 minutes of raw, legal-grade proof. I took it straight to my lawyer. He lit up. "This is perjury. This blows her case wide open. We're filing a counterclaim." Rachel didn't know what was coming. But just when I thought I was one step ahead, my parents decided to intervene. Not to help. To protect her. I got a call from my father. "You're tearing this family apart," he said coldly. "She lied. She tried to steal my company and take me down in court. You think this is on me? She's still your sister." "No. She's a fraud with my blood." He hung up. Later that week, my mom emailed me a long-winded message about how disappointed she was in me. She said things like, "You should have just let her have it. You're the man. You'll bounce back." Let her have it? My life's work? My mother believed I was built to endure betrayal, and Rachel was built to be adored. But I didn't bend. Instead, I moved fast. We served Rachel with a counterclaim for perjury, fraud, and business identity theft. Amir's recording was the foundation of our evidence. But here's where it got insane. Rachel retaliated by going nuclear. She leaked fake DMs from an old Instagram account claiming I had emotionally manipulated her, made her feel unsafe in our shared office, and shamed her into silence. It was a disgusting, fabricated attack, pure PR war. People on Twitter picked sides. Some believed her. Others dissected the screenshots and realized they were obviously doctored. Timestamps didn't align, fonts were off, and one had a visible typo in my name. Still, the damage lingered. I lost 2 investors. One media outlet pulled a profile they were going to run on my comeback. And yet, I wasn't done. I had one more play. A secret card I had never shown anyone. Months ago, when I started building the business, I kept a private, time-stamped Git repository of all the code, every line, commit, and update. I had logged thousands of entries under my name. That repo was unshakable proof. I printed the logs, presented them in court, alongside the Amir confession, the doctored DM analysis, the false trademark claim. It was an avalanche of evidence. And Rachel? She cracked. During deposition, when questioned under oath about Amir's real role, her hands started to shake. She blurted out, "He said he was a developer. I didn't know he was lying." Her own lawyer's face went stiff. I smiled, for the first time in months. But the moment that broke everything was when Rachel said, "You don't get it. He always took the spotlight." I deserved something too. I leaned forward and whispered, "Then build your own." The judge adjourned. Outside the courthouse, I stood alone, under a gray sky, knowing the storm was finally passing. But then my phone buzzed. A blocked number. A voicemail. I played it back. It was my mother. "I hope you're happy. Rachel's in the hospital. She tried to overdose." My chest locked. Because even when I was winning, I was losing. And now the question wasn't just about my company or my name. It was whether I could survive the guilt of finally standing up for myself. I should have felt vindicated after the deposition. But all I felt was heavier. My sister's hospital room was white and sterile when I walked in. Plastic chairs, humming machines, the stench of antiseptic and silence. She lay there, tubes in her arms, her face pale. For a moment, I saw her as we were at 10 years old, back when we shared secrets, not courtrooms. My mother sat by her bedside, eyes red and full of accusation. "This is what you wanted?" she whispered. I didn't reply, because if I did, I'd scream. Instead, I turned to Rachel and said quietly, "Was it worth it?" She looked away. The doctor said she'd be fine. It was an impulsive decision. Pills, wine, desperation. A cry for help, not a suicide attempt. But they blamed me anyway. Dad texted me one sentence. "You pushed her too far." And just like that, the spotlight shifted again, from her betrayal to my reaction. I went back home, alone, sat in my condo, looking at the framed certificate of incorporation from my startup, feeling like I was holding a victory I couldn't celebrate. The media hadn't heard about the hospital yet. Thank God. But Rachel's legal team made sure word leaked that we had settled privately. Settled? I didn't settle. I won. But silence favors the liar. My investors returned slowly, but something had changed. They were colder, more distant, like they weren't sure if I was a genius or a grenade. Then came the next blow. A letter from my parents' lawyer. They were reconsidering the family trust. Apparently, since I'd turned on Rachel publicly, they felt I no longer represented the family legacy. They were cutting me out. Let me be clear, I didn't want their money. But the message behind the act? We'd rather honor her lies than your truth. I stopped replying to their texts. I stopped checking the family group chat, well, the one they used to have me in, before I was silently removed months ago. But one night, around 2 a.m., I got a notification. An anonymous email. Subject, "You should see this." Attached was a blurry video. Rachel, in a hospital gown, sitting upright, laughing. "You think he's gonna forgive me after that little stunt?" she asked someone off camera. "Please. He thinks I overdosed. I just needed to slow things down. He was getting too close to burying me." My blood went ice. The date stamp was 2 days after she'd been admitted. I played it again. The laughter, the words, the manipulation. She faked her breakdown. Not completely. She did take the pills, but only enough to trigger a scare. A pause. A media freeze. She wanted time to pivot. Play the victim. And it worked. My parents were back on her side. The press had left her alone. And I was spiraling. But now I had the truth. Again, I traced the IP address from the email. It led me to someone surprising, an old friend of hers. One she'd ghosted years ago after a petty fight over a college boy. She sent the video because, in her words, "Rachel uses people like shoes. Thought you deserved to know." I thanked her. But this time, I didn't take it public. Not yet. Instead, I built something better. I created a new brand. Not a company. A voice. A series of viral, anonymous posts. First-person accounts of betrayal. Sibling sabotage. Gaslighting in families. Using AI voiceovers, animations, and stories that mirrored mine, without ever naming myself or Rachel. And they exploded. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. People saying, "This happened to me. This is my brother. My cousin stole from me, and my parents blamed me." And then came the DM. From Rachel. "Is this you?" I didn't answer. She sent another one. "Please, let's talk." And then, my dad called. He never called anymore. His voice was low. Broken. "I think I made a mistake," he said. I waited. Your sister, she told your mom the overdose was fake. Said she needed to buy time because she thought you were going to ruin her. Your mom hasn't stopped crying for 2 days. I didn't know, son. I swear to God, I didn't know. I wanted to believe him. But belief is expensive when you've been betrayed that many times. Instead, I said, now you know how it feels. And hung up. Then I posted the final video. The one that told the full story. Not anonymously, but in my name. My face. My voice. The title? How my sister tried to steal my company, faked a breakdown, and made my parents hate me. In the first hour, 400,000 views. In the first day, 2.7 million. Rachel texted again. You've destroyed me. But I was already typing my reply. You did that the day you took credit for my work. I just hit publish. And then, the phone rang again. Not from family. Not from media. From Netflix. And what they offered would make every betrayal feel like setup for Act 3. By the time I walked into the Netflix boardroom in LA, I was no longer someone's brother. I was the brand. A story people felt in their gut. The exec across from me was sleek, polished, and straight to the point. We don't want just one episode. We want a limited series. You, your life, the betrayal, the fallout, the rise. 6 episodes, maybe 8. Based on your posts. The offer on the table? $3.2 million for rights. Plus back-end profits. I didn't blink. Didn't look at my lawyer. Didn't ask for water. I just said, make it 7 episodes. And the final one's called The Table. He nodded slowly. Because of the dinner? Because of everything. A month later, I was walking out of a photo shoot. New headshots, polished interviews, media training. I was still me, but sharper. No longer asking for validation from a family who couldn't see past bloodlines and guilt. That's when I got a call. Mom. I stared at the screen for a long second. I answered. Her voice was hesitant. Broken. I saw your trailer, she said. My heart tensed. I stayed quiet. It hurt. To see myself through your eyes. I finally replied. No, Mom. That was you through my lens. The same lens you refused to look through all my life. A pause. Then she whispered. Is it all true? I didn't sugarcoat it. All of it. And some things I held back. Out of love. She didn't speak for 10 seconds. Then she asked, do you hate us? I didn't even think. No. I don't have time to hate anyone anymore. Not when I've finally built something that's mine. Just mine. She started crying softly. But I didn't comfort her this time. Because sometimes, healing is silence. The show dropped on a Friday. By Monday, hashtag My Sister Stole My Startup was trending globally. Episode 4, Dinner Lies, broke records. Millions watched the reenactment of that exact moment. Me sitting there, fork frozen midair, while my parents clinked glasses to my sister. The actor playing me nailed it. But nothing hit harder than the comments. This feels too real. I am him. I built something once, and my cousin sold it while I was in the hospital. This is why I went no contact. People weren't just watching, they were healing. Through my story. And that's when something wild happened. My old college professor emailed. Subject, is this you? He'd recognized the logo used in episode 2. The rough, pencil-sketched original version of my company, drawn on the back of his syllabus. He said he still had it. I asked if he could send a photo. He did. There it was. The proof. My hand-drawn sketch of the first prototype. Date stamped. Time stamped. Graded. I posted it on my new company's social media with the caption. She said it was nothing, really. Turns out nothing had a date, a sketch, and a dream behind it. Hashtag founders remember. The post went viral, again. And that's when Rachel reached out. Through her lawyer. They wanted a private meeting. It happened in a sleek, sterile office in New York. Just us, her attorney, and mine. She looked different. Less glam. More human. Tired, even. Why now? I asked. She said softly, because I never realized until I saw it play out how much I wanted your story to be mine. I was so desperate to be seen, I used your shadow like a spotlight. I stared at her, then said, you didn't use my shadow. You burned my house down and tried to live in the ashes. Her lawyer shifted awkwardly. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, an apology letter. Signed. Notarized. Agreeing to relinquish all claims on my company, past or future. No more lawsuits. No more family brand. No more pretending. There was also a handwritten note. I'm sorry. For the idea. The dinner. The silence. You deserve the table, not just a seat. Rachel. I said nothing. I signed. Because forgiveness isn't always about the other person. Sometimes, it's just permission to finally move forward. A year passed. The show won a Peabody. I was asked to speak at Stanford on ethical entrepreneurship. And one night, while I was sitting alone on my condo balcony, no parents, no lies, just the skyline, I got a text from my dad. Just 4 words. Still proud of you. This time, I didn't ignore it. I replied, me too. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to be seen. I had become impossible to ignore. If you've ever been the silent builder in a loud family, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. Because sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones rewriting the legacy. Stay tuned, more truths are coming.